So I had my audio muted on the recording. So I'll just simply say, quickly to recap, I convened the meeting at 5:40 of tonight's meeting of the planning board, Tuesday, January 27th, 2025. We have a quorum. All four members are here. We approved the minutes unanimously 3-0 just before Laura arrived. And now we're just talking about planning board vacancy. So we're going to hear from our guest tonight, Mike Houston. So I'll give you the floor to just introduce yourself to the board.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I had spent the last 32 years in Florida, moved down there in 1991 and was a tennis pro. And then I retired from tennis in 1998, still taught, but decided I'd become a realtor. And I became a realtor broker from 1998 to about 2023.
In Florida.
In Florida, Naples and Marco Island, yes. I was somewhat successful with over $250 million in home sales. My largest sale was $9 million. It's interesting that 70% of all deals down there are cash. So it's just so odd that would not be the way all the way around the country. I worked for a large developer, stock development, who was from Wisconsin. He came down and that firm, I was resale manager and resale broker and sold for him. That firm has built over 6,000 homes from 2002 to today, anywhere from $250,000 to $1,000 condos to $25 million mansions. So I was very happy to have spent that many years in Florida, but I wanted to come back. Of course, we all come back sooner or later to where we started. So now that I'm here and retired, you all know that I'm on the board of assessors, and it might be a little bit busy this year because there were some increases in taxes. We're probably going to have to deal with more than our share of abatements. And it is frustrating for those who have received an increase. Sales will do that, of course. And also donate my free time to the Frontier Regional High School boys tennis team. I spend 3 hours a day for almost 2 to 3 months for free, teaching them tennis, life skills, so to speak. I like to stay busy, and that's why when JD approached me and said, "Would you like to be part of the planning board?" I said, "Yeah, I think I'd like that." I know my mom was part of the planning board years ago. In terms of my experience, I do believe being a realtor with great experience in appraising properties, dealing with builders who were also worried about the variances and setbacks and things like that. Somewhat helps me in this position. I play guitar. I like low stake poker on Friday nights. I still play tennis and golf, and actually enjoy maintaining the lawn and using the snowblower. But that snowblower part is starting to fade a bit. Yeah. But that's who I am, and I certainly invite any questions, but I'm here because it interests me, and I want to see if I can help make a difference.
Okay. So just to clarify, so the planning board meets 12 to 14 times a year. Being able to really prioritize and commit to attendance at all of these, as essentially all these meetings, barring some serious problems, like really important, because we can't do any business without a quorum. And in certain cases, we need 4 out of 5 members present because we have to do any sort of special.
Sure.
So you feel like in terms of your life and commitments and boundaries between what you do, you could live up to those commitments.
Oh, sure.
Important.
Yeah, it is, again, of interest to me. Once I get into the tennis season for coaching, I'm very flexible. It's a volunteer job. And if we have a meeting that night, then I would just tell the students, because I have the coach is easy responsible. I just tell them I can't be there that night. So it doesn't seem like an overly large commitment.
We generally meet for the last Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday of the month.
Yeah.
We're both fine. Friday night is poker night, so that.
Yeah, or we never meeting on Friday. Occasionally,
Sometimes there's a mid-month meeting in the spring for the special town meeting.
No.
Other questions for Mike? Questions from Mike to us?
I did do a little bit of talking with JD, and you and I have been emailing back and forth, and there was an ethical issue that we resolved.
You're completely ethical.
Being on-
There are no conflicts of interest
No
between
conflict
the
of
service on the Board of Assessors
Right.
and being on. there.
I did receive a substantial amount of literature that you sent my way, and I'll be honest, I didn't read all of it.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's true of many of us.
And I did a little research on what a planning board does, and it's interesting to me.
Good. And there are definitely opportunities for training. In fact, it's
And so,
it's a relevant topic is on our agenda for tonight.
Mike, I think probably you have a lot of experience in, diverse people, diverse backgrounds, diverse points of view, everyone coming to you, being a realtor. We got fires, extinguishing things, working with people, making things happen, good process. In your skill,
understanding people.
being a realtor, yeah.
I never sold anything to anybody. I just educated both sides, buyer and seller. And then my boss was furious at me for not asking for the check. But
Yeah.
once they had the education, which may be applicable here too, certainly applicable for the board of assessors. When someone comes in and wants to know why the taxes were increased, just because it's not an answer, if I can educate them.
Yeah.
As to what we know, then perhaps that would make a smoother transaction. So.
Yeah.
It's very important, at least to me personally, we are a nonpartisan board. The expectation is that nobody comes in with any axes to grind, that we're here really to focus on through the lens of land use, what's in the best long-term interests of ourselves and our neighbors here.
Right, like when someone wants to come in for an A and R or something. As long as they're not taking the building lot, making it smaller,
Mhm.
to its non-compliance, it doesn't matter what they're doing with it.
And help me on A&R.
That's not our.
Yeah, you're gonna learn about approval not required,
Yeah,
and
okay.
you should get yourself a copy of the Whately zoning bylaws. I tell you this, it's a page turner, like it is such compelling reading.
So if I want to go to sleep early tonight.
Yeah.
You will not be able to sleep once you start. You're gonna-
So there's similar little intricacies that come across our
Yeah.
path.
I'm sure there are.
And, you know, we're dealing with some significant planning related issues like these days.
Well-intentioned, well thought out things years ago that are not as applicable anymore.
As time
I'll
passes.
give you an example. We have AR1 and AR2. So AR1 is the frontage, not for a building lot, and then the depth to 400 feet, and beyond 400 feet is AR2. So we were talking about, well, what if someone wants to build the house, they own a whole big parcel, but they want to put it 410 feet off the road? What, do the larger frontages required,
Yeah.
do you do the larger frontages, the smaller frontages, because depending where you're putting it, the lot sizes vary. So we had to work our way through that because there's less developable land in town.
Yes.
Yeah.
So definitely
Those are the
commit
types of things we
yourself
talk about.
to looking through, they're online, but also just familiarizing yourself with our zone.
So that's zoning is not on.
Yeah, zoning's online, it's under the, and I can show you after the meeting's over where to find it. And the town clerk would be happy to get you your own
Okay.
personal copy in paper form.
It's a master plan online too.
We don't actually have, right now, a new comprehensive plan has been worked on. So I'm gonna try to close on this because there are many things on our
Okay.
agenda. So if there are no further questions for Mike, no questions from Mike to us. I will just basically call for, you know, all in favor of recommending Mike to the town moderator to be appointed to the planning board, say aye.
Aye.
All right, none opposed. So I'll take that next step. I'll keep you in the loop, Mike,
Okay, great,
and we'll go from there.
fantastic, thank you.
Great. While we're on this topic about board vacancies, I just want to remind people that, we, the planning board, often have to have representatives on certain other boards and committees. Like I am the representative from the planning board on the housing committee.
Yep.
I'm also the representative from the planning board on the capital improvement planning committee. You, JD, are the representative from the finance committee
Yes.
on the capital improvement
And
plan.
I'm the representative to the X35 committee.
The very active exit 35 study committee. Now, we also have to have a representative on the community preservation commission. And I'm not sure, I thought it was you, Laura, but then it seems to actually be Mike. And I don't know if Mike ever knew this, but the CPC is saying no one from the planning board has been attending. So,
I didn't know if I was the person. Maybe
there-
we elected Mike when he wasn't here.
Is there an ag rep on the CPC?
I have no idea.
I can say if I can pop up here today.
so I have been
I think there,
asked by
I
the-
think there was Doug Caldwell.
Yeah.
And I wanna say someone else. Yeah, I'm not sure.
So the CPC, it's important, it doesn't meet like we do, but they do review applications, they do make real decisions about spending of money. So it's a important and influential committee, so
We already
if I'm-
presentation.
if I'm catching you a little cold, we don't necessarily have to resolve this
Yeah.
tonight at the meeting.
It's news to me.
Right now, CPC thinks you're the planning board rep. And they've noted that you actually haven't come to any meetings. Because
Oh,
probably you didn't know this, okay? So, let's see if maybe, I don't think we need to have a formal vote, but we can do this offline. So I think it's gonna be either you, Mike, or if you feel you could actually,
I
Make
kind
those
of don't,
meetings.
but
How
We
often
didn't.
do they meet, you know?
that part, I think they are seasonal, like
Not
when they're
very often.
reviewing applications.
Okay. I could maybe, if it's like a low level commitment, I could probably find.
I'd be
time.
happy to like sub in for you.
It looks like every other month.
Kinda like,
We could
So
figure
my-
something out.
Well, it looks like every other month.
Oh, okay, yeah, I could probably figure that out. That's not bad. Alright, we can work that
All
out.
right,
Yeah.
we'll work that, so for the moment, I'll
we can
sort
figure it
of
out.
pencil you in, but I'll
Sure.
have a communication via email to Alan Sanderson, who runs CPC, CCing both of you, more or less saying we think we're nominating, and then let the conversation flow.
That's
over.
fine.
We don't need a public meeting
No.
vote on our representative.
I feel like I had this discussion at AgCon that someone was like, oh, aren't you on that for AgCon? Someone else in the room was like, no, I'm on it.
Okay, so that's about the vacancies. Election of planning board officers for 2026. Really, we only elect a chair and a vice chair. I'm, offering myself up to continue as chair. JD, I guess, is offering himself up to continue as vice chair. I can hear any other nomination. Who would like this job?
I think you guys are doing a
I think you're doing
fantastic
great.
job.
Yeah.
No need to make a change.
So, why don't we simply streamline this? Does somebody make a motion other than me and JD to, elect the two of us to those respective, we'll do one vote, both people, both roles.
I make a motion to elect Brant as the continued chair of the planning board and JD as the continued vice chair of the planning board.
And I was like,
You'll second that, all right, so motion has been made by Laura, seconded by Mike. All in favor, we can vote now, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye, all right. Nobody's opposed, so we have our planning board officer for 2026, thank you.
I appreciate that we do this annually.
Well, this leads, such a timely statement, JD. This leads into our next topic of the planning board policies, actually planning board rules and regulations. I want to tell you guys that I'll say a little bit more about this in a moment, but I recently took a Massachusetts Citizens Planner Training Council, Mass CPTC training on adopting and revising rules and regulations for boards like ours. That also relates to things like subdivision control rules, regulations, all of that. And I learned a whole bunch of useful stuff there. I've noted the fact that the Zoning Board of Appeals in Whately has formally adopted its own rules and regulations, and you can find them posted under the town code. The planning board has never, for whatever reason, ever had any rules and regulations. The stuff about elections, what we do, our operating procedures, that's all been what I would call folklore. And I've wanted to do something about that. And when Caroline, our new community development administrator, came on board, I was like, hey, one of the things you could do is like help us kind of like look at some other area towns and get together some rules and regs. And I had that conversation with her before I took the training on adopting rules and regulations. Meanwhile, she went off and she did this great bang up first draft, and we're not going to discuss it tonight. We'll discuss it in February. I've circulated it to all of you. And my ask of, I'm going to say that it's clearly a best practice for a planning board to have formally adopted rules and regulations. They talk about election of officers and various other things. If we look at other planning boards, they have them. The zoning board has to have their own, we have to have our own. So we need to fix this.
Is there any legality behind it?
There is.
Okay, that was my.
Thank you for asking. One of the things that I learned, like, is that there are certain places in our zoning bylaws where we talk about how we can hire outside expertise or consultants to review certain complex projects and then shift those costs over to the applicants. Like, it's actually for site plan review, there's a provision in our site plan review bylaw that says we can do just that. That if it's complex or whatever, we can hire an outside consultant and the applicant has to pay for that.
Yeah.
That's all it says. Turns out, and I'm still researching this, but based on this training I just took,
You don't have
it
any-
seems like you can't do that if you don't have in your adopted rules and regulations certain provisions that have to be consistent with state law. They're state laws
Yeah.
that pertain to the hiring of consultants and appeals processes and things like
Yeah.
that. It turns out our zoning board of appeals has these provisions in their rules and regulations. So the zoning board is good. They can hire outside consultants and caution. By the way, we can always hire outside consultants,
Right, just.
but we would have to pay out of our own budget. We can do that freely. It's the cost shifting part means that if we can't do that without formally adopted rules and regulations.
Brent, how does someone appeal one of our decisions?
Through the ZBA. The ZBA is the zoning.
Is that why this has never come up?
They
You know, like, I'm
they appeal
surprised
our-
that this has never been an
It's
issue in
because.
the history of Whately.
As far as I know, interestingly, I'm not aware of a situation where this has ever been done. I've heard that the zoning board of appeals has done this in the past, but I don't know that it's.
Which would make sense because they're enforcing our,
So
Yeah.
someone doesn't like our site plan review
just saying.
decision, they can appeal to the ZBA?
Yeah, and then based on that, they can take it to land court.
Okay,
So there's like anything, there's various levels of.
I didn't realize the ZBA was,
That's
Because
the
everyone
appeals
has-
part in zoning.
everyone has a right to appeal.
Yeah, and there's a provision in our zoning bylaws
Yeah.
that speaks about appeals.
Yep, good.
All right, so that's good. So anyway, this is all like this wonderful confluence, like, okay. We've got a draft of rules and regs for the planning board that Caroline has put together and I've circulated to all of you. So my ask is that between now and next meeting, you all look over those. Send any comments or questions to Carol.
Okay.
With a CC to me. And then ideally at our February meeting, we will have a final draft. And of course, you don't have to do a public hearing, you just have to do a public meeting. And have a vote to adopt the rules and regulations.
Okay.
All right, and so, all right, so that is an action for all of you and for anyone who might be joining the planning board, all right? So I believe I've sent you
You did,
a copy of the
you did.
rules and regulations,
You did,
and
yeah.
now you all know, and it is so very important because as we talk about the battery storage file draft we're working. There are provisions in there for hiring consultants at applicant expense, which we wouldn't be able to do in the absence of our own approved rules and regs that include the relevant provisions, okay? So, that's that on, not so much policies and procedures, but rules and regulations. Next item. Just a couple of.
I just wanted to
Oh, yeah.
make one little point. I just want to make sure we go through this whole thing. I appealed the decision to the planning board, not the Board of Health.
Yes,
And was told
Which is
by,
not land use, so that wouldn't go through.
I'm just, I understand, just saying, that they gave me an order, the board of What else Health District gave me an order to do something
Yep,
that I wanted to appeal, so I appealed to the Board of Health. You have 10 days to appeal something, Board of Health,
ah,
for them to respond to it. So when I sent it to Foothills, they ignored my request for. No, I'm sorry, it's 5 or 7 days. They ignored my request, trying to wait out the appeals period before they got back to me.
yeah,
And once you go beyond that day, you can't appeal anymore. So I got a decision on Monday, on a Wednesday, and I had till like Monday at the close of business to submit it to town clerk, or they wouldn't hear my appeals. They weren't responding to me.
so that seems like, again, there ought to be
So
higher,
we need to make sure that it's clear what the appeal period is. When we issue a decision for something, they have so many days to get to us, and we need to respond to that.
so look at the, again, the appeal process is in the, currently in the zoning
I
bylaws.
just want to make sure.
In our rules and
I'd like to-
regs, in our rules and regs that you're going to be looking at, it's just about hiring of outside consultants. And there are certain ways of where the applicant can appeal our choice of the outside consultant.
Okay.
So it's a very limited kind of appeal process built into our rules and regs, because the appeal process in general is already in our zoning bylaws.
On the other side of what we do here, I've had to have zoning appeals and planning board decisions where I have to wait out the appeal period before it's enforced. When you get, like, the planning board will give me permission to do something subject to waiting out the 21-day appeal period.
Oh, yeah.
That happens to me quite often, so we always wait that out. But yeah, that's pretty standard.
Okay, quick update, just wanted, this is sort of relevant also, so Mike's aware that we have a general provision, there's state law about agricultural operations being generally exempt from zoning in Massachusetts. And we have a provision in our zoning bylaws that says that normal agricultural uses, I think is the language, are exempt from like site plan review, things like that. We had gotten an inquiry related to a development activity at Chang Farms, which is at 301 River Road. I wrote back to them, said, well, you know, you should check in with the building commissioner to make sure that you need a site plan review. They took my advice, they went to the building commissioner looked at what they were doing at Chang Farms and said, this fits the definition of normal agricultural use, exempt site plan. So the building commissioner said, no site plan.
Similar to North Farms. That's
Similar to North, so I don't know the scale and scope of what's planned at Chang Farm, but the building commissioner used the building commissioner is our zoning enforcement officer. We have no enforcement powers on the planning board, nor does the zoning board of appeals. Anything that relates to enforcement of zoning in Whately has to go to the building inspector. And so, and the building inspector made that decision, simply wanted you to be aware of it. Simmer's Creamy. Mike has been working very helpfully, and I don't know, Mike, if you knew this, but I'm gonna share my screen. Today,
Yeah, I
a
heard about
letter
it through the
from
different grapevine.
Simmer's Creamy, I'll give you all the background on this, just give me one quick second to do a screen share, so I can show you this letter and you all that. Okay, hopefully you can see this letter on the screen. Simmer's Creamy on River Road. There are provisions. We have definitions in our table of use regulations regarding farm stands. And there's something called a farm stand A and B. Farm stand A has at least 300 square feet of retail space. And then farm stand B. Farm stand A is 300, farm stand B. Well, anyway, the main point is that to be a farm stand, you must sell a certain portion of your products at that farm stand. You can't set up using this example with Mike, you can't have a farm, put up a building, put a big sign on it saying it's, Joe's Farm Stand, and then sell furniture or carpeting or whatever, right? You can't do just general commercial activity. And just because you call it a farm stand doesn't make it a farm stand. Simmer's Creamy, over the years, seemed to have to whether it was at one point actually a farm stand with ice cream and food seems to have been the case, but for the last few years, or last couple of years, it seemed like they were only operating as a retail food establishment, which was not consistent with zoning bylaws. We've had communications informal, but I wanted to just again, bring to everyone's attention that this coming season, I was going to make a point of kind of checking in on them and making sure that they are following the bylaws. And if not, because we have no enforcement powers, I was going to raise a concern with the building inspector. But I asked Mike, our representative on AgCom, as sort of informal representative on AgCom,
Yeah.
to make sure the AgCom is aware about what we mean by farm stands and see if the AgCom had any feedback for the planning board as to whether they like or don't like how the zoning bylaws currently treat farm stands, but also use the AgCom as a sort of a informal channel of friendly communication with the owners, because I like Simmers. I don't really want to see them shut down. I really like to see them follow the rules. So this letter was dropped off today, that you can see. So I guess Mike, ADU and the AgCom word got over to them.
I believe so.
Okay, just take credit.
Just, yeah.
I'm impressed that they're realizing they were not in compliance. They're trying to get back into compliance.
Yeah.
This letter saying they're gonna do that.
Yes.
So, but it's closed.
So, yes, so again, this is, from my perspective, this is great. It's still trust but verify. So I just wanted you to be aware, we have this application.
His reasons for coming to buying this business in a pandemic. After Mr. Bishosnik died. And then taking over and doing the best he can the first years, thing like that, obviously will be growing pains than last year's.
Yeah.
Labor struggles, I can certainly see that.
Right,
That's
yeah, so I,
understandable, so, yeah.
we have to stand, we do have to defend the zoning bylaws.
Yeah.
And if we think they're wrong, we have to fix them, but my sense is that these are perfectly reasonable. So do you have any news at all from AgCom? They're going to talk about this at some point? Or?
Everyone was gonna kind of mull it over until our February meeting. There were some instant replies or
Okay.
opinions, but
Okay.
yeah, everyone's gonna. One thing they were very interested in was, and I'm gonna print it and bring it, was like the actual
Yeah,
zoning rule.
good.
Trying to like get it off a computer. Phone.
Yeah,
Wasn't gonna fly,
it's
so-
really just the
Yeah,
definition.
exactly. So what you sent to me,
Yeah,
and then they're very concerned about like when that was adopted. Just because I think if AgCom's gonna present anything to us,
yeah,
they want it to, to make sense.
okay.
So,
All right, well, I'm happy
yeah.
to field any
Yeah.
inquiries, and the nice thing about our online code is that it does pretty much document when
When it was,
everything
right.
was there.
Yeah, so I'll give them more of a, like, it was kind of a, at the end of the meeting, just, this is happening, think about it.
Good.
So our next meeting is gonna be, on the agenda, so to speak. It's a little less formal than other boards.
Yes, so the key things is in the terms defined section of the bylaws, there's a definition of farm stand A, which is like a good
Yeah,
paragraph, and there's another definition of farm stand B. And those two, farm stands A and B, are then permitted in various places in town.
Yeah.
And
and it's pretty straightforward,
Right.
I think. I don't think it's,
yeah, it shouldn't be, and it should be fair and reasonable, and I would think that our farming community would be supportive. But if they have any grief with these definitions, or they feel it's overly restrictive, or it's making life hard for farmers, and it's something we should know about.
Yeah, they may come up with like a suggestion on wording. So like one big thing was Simmers doesn't sell product there, but they farm hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
Right.
acres.
Right. But
To
then,
me, that doesn't make sense, but to a lot of other farmers,
right,
they didn't understand, you know what I mean?
right,
So, yeah, I was trying to,
yeah,
Like,
but you have
that
to
doesn't-
ask, yeah, do they
Right.
want their farming neighbors to be able to set up farm stands and
To
sell
sell
random things?
right.
Yeah, okay, all right, I think we can close on this,
She's perfect.
all right.
GMT pickups.
So what I'm gonna do. Do I? Here. My next topic is just quickly, so I mentioned that I've actually done three. I want to again recommend this masscptc.org. And they're just these great training resources. I've done the training on, the 40B, which has to do with affordable housing. I've done a training on subdivision control. I just did the training on the adopting rules and regulations, and I've got one more coming up that I'm forgetting for the moment. So I really, if you go to the site, there are various ongoing trainings. So we don't really need creating master plans. Drafting zoning amendments is coming up. That's already in the past. That's January 14. Use of design review. So it may be that we're done with this particular season. But the other thing on a related topic. And I collected from the various trainings that I completed, the slides and associated guidebook, which I think I'm gonna try to make sure I've circulated all of you. But for example, it's worth, before we do our next A&R through the subdivision control law, should definitely review the training materials related to A&Rs, because I learned some new things there. So I'll try to make sure you have all of that. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and there is reimbursement through the planning board budget for training. I wanted to point out.
Oh, you asked me if I could present to the planning board at finance.
Yeah,
Pete's gonna do it.
oh, good,
He said, no, he said, let me do that, because he's doing all the other boards that day, so.
that certainly works. I wanted to put this out there as a really strongly recommended opportunity for anyone who wants to learn more in a very time efficient way. So the CPTC is having their annual conference at Holy Cross College in Worcester. A little bit of a trip. It's most of the day, there's breakfast and lunch, and then there are all of these parallel sessions with training. And discussions, in-depth discussions of very relevant topics. I haven't been able to, I was there 2 years ago and I learned so much in like one time. So they haven't mentioned what this, I sent an email saying, how come your web page doesn't say what the registration fee is? It's usually not that expensive. But I would say we can reimburse for travel and registration fees if anybody wants to go. It's fun if more than one person goes. It's on a Saturday. The date is on March 21st. So I'm gonna really plug having, I may go, and it might be good if at least one other person, like another officer, might consider going. Yeah,
It's my one thing to get stuff done.
okay, anyway, all I'm gonna say about that.
Okay.
It's a really Really worth it. Okay. Very good. So now, 6:17 PM, we're doing fine. So now what I wanna do, now I'm gonna turn to some real. The battery energy storage systems bylaw draft update. So I can't possibly bring Mike up to date on all of this, but we have been studying battery energy storage systems and state laws and the evolving regulations and model bylaws. So I've circulated to all of you my latest draft of a battery energy storage bylaw that's derived mostly from the state model, tweaked a little bit, and we're gonna just start to walk through it. I'll give you a little big picture what I hope to do. I hope to discuss as much of it as we can for maybe the next 25 minutes or so. And then we're gonna discuss it some more in February. My goal is to do a public hearing. I have enough of something ready to go for a public hearing in March so that we could get something to annual town meeting for June. Okay, and if there's a potential of having the public hearing in April, maybe, but that's kind of my notional schedule.
Brent, do you know anything about, like, I'm just reading the news a little bit about local communities, best system before them? So down the Ag One or Westfield or somewhere down there.
Yeah, Agawam,
Ag One.
there's been a few, yeah. I want to say Southampton
Yeah,
or Southwick, Southampton. Yeah, there's,
I mean, they've been
Yeah.
around in various communities are responding to them in different ways. But we do need to, final regs are, March 1st is when new state regulations come into effect. We have until September 30th to,
put something together.
yeah.
We've been talking about this for a while. Any other communities got theirs past the Attorney General? Any more feedback?
Nothing, no, I do not know of anything, any other towns that have done anything consistent with the model.
Okay.
All right,
All right.
and there's still a lot of unknowns about what happens if a town has a battery storage bylaw that's approved, that's now not consistent with state law.
Right.
It could,
They'll give them a year to
yeah.
change it.
Yeah, and it creates challenges, it creates legal exposure to the town, and I think we're actually pretty close to having something. So I'm going to just give you the high level, because I'm gonna like bang the table, like everyone needs to look at this closely over the next month, all right? And I wanna, the definitions are pretty straightforward. The table of use is like the last thing we're gonna really look at. This table of use regulation should very much, you should take this with a grain of salt, because I haven't thought carefully about what goes where. All right, so let's not, I'm just gonna pass over that because I want to get into the substance of the draft. The purpose statement is pretty straightforward. It's just taken directly from the model, so I'm gonna skip over that. I've streamlined the applicability section streamlined the version that was in the model bylaw. I wanna reiterate this key design principle. I want to say this almost every time we discuss this. We have 3 tiers of battery storage systems, very consistent with the state regulations. The idea is tier 1 is systems that are less than 250 kilowatt hours. This is the cutoff used in state regulations, below which the state basically says these small systems are largely exempt from all kinds of things. And they don't want, or they're discouraging communities from overregulating. And so I'm trying to implement in this draft an approach where tier one, these are small systems and they would be permitted anywhere in town as of right with no site plan review and no special permit. All right, they would have to meet the basic state fire codes, electrical codes, building permits would be required. So there is some visibility into these systems, but we don't have any purview, nor does the ZBA. That would be tier one. Basically, small, safe systems that we don't need to regulate.
Yep.
Then there's this tier two, 250 kilowatt hours up to 10 megawatt hours. And that 10 megawatt hour, we've sort of debated where to draw that line, but the general sense is that up to about 10 megawatt hours, these systems are still relatively small. They might be a shipping container or maybe two. They may be the kind of things that get co-located with solar electric generating facilities to help balance the storage generation of those facilities. So the idea with tier two is that now there's going to be site plan review. And they're not necessarily allowed, they might be allowed as of right in certain places, but with site review in addition. Right? What that means is that the planning board has visibility into the project, where it's going. It's a sort of a trust but verify situation. Normally, a planning board cannot deny approval of a site plan. But if we discover through our site plan review that a project is not conforming to zoning bylaws, then we are legally allowed to deny approval. So we do have some teeth in this middle tier. So you can allow something as of right, but with site plan review. Right? So the idea is sort of a medium level of regulation for tier two, but still generally let them go where they need to go. And then tier three are the larger systems that might be standalone. They might take up several acres of land, and the tier three would be site plan review and special permit from the zoning board. All right, so lowest level, they can just go in, they have to comply with certain basic rules, but we don't have we don't have much oversight. Tier two, site plan review, tier three, site plan review and special permit. And then I've tried to set this bylaw up to provide these different levels of regulation based on the tiers. Okay. One of the things I'm still struggling with, to be transparent, is there is now a model bylaw for BESS, for battery storage, as well as a model bylaw for solar. I have not been able to dig into the solar bylaw, and I don't know to what extent our existing solar bylaw is or is not consistent with model or the state. You know, like, I don't live in a perfect world. I do need to at some point deal with solar. So, and I've made some efforts. Our current solar bylaw has some language in it related to battery storage that currently is inconsistent with what we're doing in this new battery storage bylaw. So towards the end of this document, I've started to make some efforts to figure out how we might just surgically tweak our solar bylaw to resolve inconsistencies with the battery storage bylaw without going further potentially replace the solar bylaw with an entirely new bylaw based on a new state law. Like that might be next year, right, all walk from. Alright, so there is some language here that says co-located BESS installations. Co-located BESS installations are those that are co-located with solar facilities, by definition. They'll be permitted in all districts where solar electric generating facilities are allowed. And they'll have to follow the requirements of this battery storage bylaw as well as the solar bylaw. So I'll make sure that my little tweaks in the solar bylaw, that should all be consistent. The next two paragraphs say that for projects were categorized as by right, only sections C and D apply. I'll start to dig into what sections C and D are, but basically D is about, C is general requirements and D is other things. Then for projects that require site plan review, C, D, and E apply. Section E of this bylaw deals with site plan review of battery storage. Section F of this bylaw deals with special permits of battery storage. So I try to make it very clear up front that just section C and D apply for the tier 1. Projects that require site plan review would be tier 2 and tier 3. And projects that require a special permit would be tier 3. So I'm sorry, tier 3 would be special permit and site plan review. So there's nothing that gets a special permit without site plan review. It's either nothing, or it's site plan review, or it's site plan review and special permit. Okay? So general requirements. These apply to all 3 tiers of BESS. General, they all have to comply with the state's electrical code, the state's fire code, and the NFPA 855 standard, which is a standard we've looked at before about stationary battery energy storage systems. So, and then there's again language here. This compliance section is just requires all battery storage systems to comply with all relevant local, state, and other regulations. And then there's a provision that says no installation shall be constructed, installed, or modified without obtaining building and or electrical permits. I'm going to need to just make sure, because notice this is applying to tier 1. And I still believe that even if it's a small battery storage, like when I had a 12 kilowatt system put in my basement, I know my installer had to pull a building permit for that. And so I think it's a reasonable expectation of a building permit for even small systems. So section C is very short, general requirements. These are just basically everything has to comply with all regulations, everything needs a building permit. Section D has to do with pre-filing requirements. So this is something we're also going to have to grapple with. The state's new laws say that for certain tiers of battery storage, particularly anything above 250 kilowatt hours, municipalities must adopt what's called a consolidated permitting process. And there are more guidelines coming out about this, but it basically means that there's going to be new requirements on how planning boards, zoning boards, boards of health, and conservation commissions, all these other boards and commissions that might have a stake in reviewing and approving such projects. Right now, as we know, these are all bespoke processes. If you want to build something, you have to go on your own to the Concom, you go on your own to the Board of Health, There's no streamlined process for this. And for these clean energy facilities, state law says, no. Now there has to be a streamlined, consolidated, like a single point of like an applicant for a tier 2 or tier 3 battery storage needs to put in one application. And they have to get an answer from all stakeholder boards and commissions within 12 months. That having to go separately to all of these different ones. And they need to get an answer, yay or nay, by the end of 12 months. And if they don't, their application is constructively approved. So our ZBA, we, Concom, Board of Health are gonna start to have conversations in the coming year, but how are we going to prepare for?
It's very interesting, when they have the building permit, everyone gets notified.
Yeah,
All the information is central on the permanent system,
yeah,
all the documents there. So when I apply for a building permit for a house, all the Board of Health documents there, the planning documents, highway, fire, everything, tax collector, it all comes
Yeah.
back to that one.
And maybe-
Software.
I don't, does the town sort of adopt that system?
Well, they start with filing a building permit.
Yeah, maybe,
Cause boy, you don't apply for a permit from CBA, you apply for a building permit, the building inspector rejects it, and then you get, that goes to the CBA.
that's what's supposed
So
to.
you start with building permit.
So, I'm not gonna go into the gory details of that, but just like something to be aware of. So there is, in the model, there is a provision related to pre-filing requirements, because according to state law, for certain larger projects, and I think it's basically projects greater than 250 kilowatt hours, namely our tier 2 and tier 3, there's a state requirement for pre-filing engagement that applicants have to provide appropriate notification so they've actually, they've increased transparency, but once you get above tier 1, there's a lot of,
Steps.
a lot of steps if you're an applicant. So, I just made that clear here that applicants for tier 2 and tier 3 best installations must complete several pre-filing steps. And all of the details are outlined in state guidelines. We don't have to say how this is all done, we just refer to it by reference in our bylaw. And then there's a provision in Part D for fees. Applications must include required fees for site plan review and special permit as applicable. And if it's possible, state law allows for this consolidated review or consolidated permitting process to have its own fee schedule. So we have a provision that says we're allowed to charge those fees. So C and D, what I've just covered, just applies to tier 1. Well, it applies to tiers 1, 2, and 3. But if you're tier 1, you're done after part D here. Site plan review starts to apply when you get into tiers 2 and 3. Again, virtually all of this is coming from the model bylaw. I've inserted this. I've inserted this provision 3, hiring a consultant, and I put it clearly up front under site plan review. It says that we and the ZBA shall have the right to retain a registered professional engineer, blah, 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 to advise us regarding any or all aspects of the site plan. The applicant shall be responsible for the cost of such advice. And this is why, once we have our rules and regs in place, we can actually do this if this should ever come up. All the required documents are from the model bylaw. I've made really no changes there. Though I've added this one provision that came over from our Energy Systems Study Committee. This has to do with locations of public and private water supplies within 1,000 feet of the project site if publicly available. So our Energy Storage System Study Committee was very concerned not only about protecting public water supplies, but private wells.
I do think the Mass Mapper, Massachusetts is like free GIS tool that's out there available to everybody. I think there is a layer in there for private public and private wells. I'm like 75% sure.
Okay. This is still something that I haven't run fully to ground. I know that public water supplies are GIS located and
Yeah.
mappable. But I don't know about every private well. And
Yes, I don't know how comprehensive it is, but I have to do environmental reviews for work for often. And I use that tool a lot. And I do think I recently saw a layer for private drinking water sources. Cause I was trying to, actually, you know what? I know for a fact you can look this up because I just had to look up a well for a property that I was dealing with at work. You can look it up. It's available to everyone from the state. It's not in Mass Mapper. There's a different resource available.
Okay, all right, so it's
It should be, yes.
publicly available. All right,
Yes.
so then this provision probably can be left in there. Though I'll leave if publicly available as the clause
Yeah.
there.
I depend on a private well for my house and my property is worthless if my well goes bad, because I don't know if we can get another one. It's
Yeah.
400 feet deep. So I think that is valid for people
So
with
we're gonna
concern.
require that applicants include this information in their site plan documentation for us. Everything else here, aside from this one clause that I've added, comes from the bottom. Right, so the state must believe that these are all
Mhm.
reasonable things, and I've seen these same provisions in other towns' bylaws that existed before the new state law came out.
Is the 1,000 feet comfortable? Like, is that a,
So this is something we have to think about, because I know that the I'll just say the ES3C, or the Citizens Committee wanted to, make sure that battery storage systems, really of any size, were at least, I think, 750 feet away from any private water supply.
right?
750 feet. Now, the Board of Health's own regulations don't have anything anywhere near that. Like, I think it's anywhere from 100 to 150 foot setbacks
It's 100 for,
to like, is it
it's
100?
100 for something.
For septic, right? So, your private well can be 100 feet away from your neighbor's
Right.
septic leach. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not as. So I don't know the justification.
Well, I think it probably depends on too, like depth of well. There is a lot of factors at play. So I don't know if the surface distance is,
There was no difference in
Yeah,
mine versus a shallow well or an artesian well for the separation.
yeah. So this is where we're going to just have to use reasonable judgment, because I don't
Right.
know that there's
Right.
geologic, hydrology data on
No,
if a
I don't think
battery
there would be.
storage system does this,
right.
how is this gonna propagate? So
But it seems, to me anyway, it seems reasonable that there should be some consideration for somebody's private well drinking
Yes.
water.
Yeah.
Because, you're really
I'm fine
screwed
with
if your
1,000
well
feet.
gets,
and if
I don't
that's,
know if 1,000 feet is the
we
maybe
use
it
a
is
1,000 feet
500
for.
feet, I don't know.
We use 1,000 feet for things like distance to certain things from like cannabis operations, right?
I was just.
Like
yeah,
schools, so 1,000 feet is not an unprecedentedly large
Sure.
distance. And it just gives us a sense of where the wells are, maybe density,
Mhm.
where people are drawing their private water supplies. And this is only just a request for information, gives us data to evaluate when we're doing a site plan review. Everything else is fairly straightforward here. There is this proof of liability insurance, but there's nothing more detailed like how much, but I haven't found any other language, that might be, that would allow us to specify what would constitute adequate liability insurance. And I debated just adding the word adequate into this little
Mhm.
provision, but I think that this is something that if we had proof of liability insurance, we could have a
You asked-
discussion during a site plan review about what is this for? Is this enough?
You asked for the town to be additionally insured for it.
Yes, I was
That's
gonna
what
say
you do.
that.
That's for additional insured, and then when the coverage is over or lapsed, the town gets notified that it's not
Mhm.
covered, because I require additional insurance from my subcontractors.
Okay,
And when they get it, they automatically send me this certificate, and if they change, they lapse, I get notified immediately that they're no longer covered.
okay,
So additional insured is the easiest way to do that.
okay.
Yep.
So those are pretty much, everything is from the model, site control. This is still all within the quite lengthy part of the bylaw dealing with site plan review. So there's site control. Project owner has to have documentation of actual or prospective access to all the property. Then there's the operation and maintenance. I think I may have added this little bit of text, general procedures for operational maintenance of the installation. Because there have been concerns like, once it's built, how are they testing and verifying that all the safety and security systems are still working? How are they maintaining a buffer zone of vegetation or an area free of flammable vegetation so that a fire starting at the facility won't spread and get beyond the facility? So there's a little bit of about that. In the emergency response plan, I think I just, yes, I added this text at the end. The applicant shall supply documentation of adequate water supply to meet the requirements of the emergency response plan and a detailed plan for handling runoff from an emergency response to prevent contamination of groundwater. That's an attempt to address concerns about contamination in the event of an accident. Early notification. Then there are these dimension, density, and site requirements. So there's setbacks. So for tier one, these small systems, they just have to comply with whatever the setbacks are for the zoning district where they're located. So if you're putting it sort of outside your house, it has to be set back just like any other structure. For a tier two or tier three, regardless of where they are, I've set these 100-foot setbacks all around, with the idea being that given these setbacks, the 100-foot setbacks for a tier two or tier three facility, and the setbacks for adjacent properties to things like septic and water supplies, that would necessarily create an adequate buffer between a battery storage facility and an adjacent private water supply. The Citizens Committee had proposed language that just basically said battery storage has to be set back 750 feet from the nearest public or private water supply. But again, I didn't see any rationale for the 750-foot distance. And it just seems simpler to just set this consistent setback from the property lines for tier two and tier three. So, and I'm just going over this right now to sort of orient you and give you a chance to really then think about it over the intervening month. And then we'll focus in February on comments and changes that you feel we really need to make. The ZBA can reduce these setback requirements, and they'd only do that in the case of a special permit application.
I'm concerned that those setbacks might be too restrictive, because it's gonna restrict a lot, any of these going in the. When our frontage required is 200 feet and 175 feet. So basically, any lot that just meets our minimum frontage is. In AR1, AR2 is not gonna be applied, not applicable.
I don't know if there's not about frontage.
Well, no, if you're saying if you're 100 people that's mentioned.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, that's correct.
You need a lot with at least like.
Yeah, well, look at our
You're 300.
you should look at our solar, the setbacks required in our solar bylaw, solar facility, which I think are 100 feet. And it's true that Judy, who is one of the architects of the solar bylaw, has since said that she thinks that maybe the setbacks in the solar bylaw are overly restrictive.
I think it might get us kicked out by the governor, the attorney general.
Well, but you're also thinking that the lot is only a square. My lot goes like this.
Right.
So depending on the shape, if it's not a perfect rectangle or a square or whatever, there may be. I mean, I'm not saying that 100 is the end all be all, maybe it's 50 feet is more realistic or whatever, but not everybody's gonna have a perfect.
So these are some of the things where I think each one of us is gonna sort of need to stare at this for a little
I
bit.
think our original discussions about this is you're telling us that the attorney general is not gonna let us restrict it out if it's not allowed.
Right.
Right.
And what the general feedback is that when the Attorney General's office is reviewing approved bylaws, like assuming we take this to town meeting and town meeting approves it. In general, unless there's a clear inconsistency with state law, the Attorney General will defer to the town and let the bylaw stand. But that doesn't mean, and they will say to us that doesn't mean that your bylaw could not, could withstand a legal challenge. Because an applicant could come in and say, in this case, this is unreasonable. They could win that case.
I kind of wish we had a map that showed, based on all these rules, what land is available.
Yeah.
And I think that available is gonna be really, really, really small.
Yeah,
And I'm
I
worried,
think
the attorney general is gonna be like, it's too small.
I don't know, like, I think the actual, the model puts them at 20 or 50 foot setbacks, which are even smaller than our baseline setbacks lately. So the Attorney General at one time did approve our solar bylaw with these fairly large setbacks. I'm not going beyond that.
All right.
So, but this is where we use our judgment.
Right.
What's appropriately restrictive and not overly burdensome. So think about that. So there are general setbacks. There is language here that says, and I've used what I think is better language to setback from the floodplain district. A tier 2 or tier 3 best facility must be located at least 100 feet from the nearest boundary of the floodplain overlay district. So the edge.
Yeah,
These
you want
are
a
the
100-foot
FEMA
buffer zone around the floodplain.
Correct.
Is what you're. Yeah.
So I'm treating the floodplain as just like a private water supply. Like I want at least 100 feet away from the floodplain area. Because the old language was best facility must be located 100 feet above the floodplain, which is kind of this weird, like wrong language. Okay. So this is, it is more of a setback, a distance from the boundary of the floodplain. Then there's standard language about the height of any structure.
That's inconsistent.
It is.
Because we're 35 feet.
It is. And I'm not, this was the number that the energy storage committee, so we might need to adjust it from 25. And I'm not sure why they lowered it. Again, I remember you had asked at one point, JD, about stacking. Like what if they put stack shipping containers one on top of another?
I think the
35 feet
containment in that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, I think so.
A 2-story house, the 12-pitch roof gets you to 35 feet.
So you would probably recommend
I would keep.
making these consistent with the height elsewhere in our bylaw.
Oh, yeah, our bylaws are 35 feet.
Alright,
It's just.
pertinent structures. And then there's this new language I just put in there about protection of. Oh yeah, this is protection of public water supplies. So this says a tier 2 or tier 3 best installation may not be established within the aquifer protection district. Now this one is still gonna require some, I'm gonna have to do some further research. Because our aquifer protection district comprises 3 zones. Zone 1 right around the wellhead, zone 2 above the aquifer, zone 3, whatever captures water that flows into
The
water.
watershed.
Watershed.
All right, now, tier 2, I'm sorry, zone, was I saying tiers or zones? That's confusing. Anyway, zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. Zones 1 and 2 have status in state law in the drinking water regulations. And I've seen some indications from the state that it's okay to prohibit things like battery storage in a zone 2. They're already prohibited in zone 1.
Right.
It might not be clearly okay to prohibit them in zone 3. Luckily, our aquifer protection district, all 3 zones altogether, is still a relatively small part of our land. So this could potentially be okay, but we might have to revise that to just say it can't be established within zones 1 or 2 of the aquifer protection district. So that's an open question. And then there are all of these design standards that are used when we do site plan review that are pretty standard. I don't think there's anything I want to draw your attention to. Well, new there, safety and environmental standards, and pretty much from the model. So I added this,
For Brad,
what was that?
scroll down.
I mean, up,
Oh, the other way, the other way.
the other way, toward the top or towards the bottom?
Uh,
Okay,
PFAS.
that up the way. Where do you want me to go?
Go to more. PFAS, next page.
Yeah,
What does PFAS stand for?
there is a definition in the definitions, it's
It's
the
an, okay.
It's like the
rare
forever chemical.
fluoro, these are these forever chemicals that are bad.
Don't use
PFAS.
It's in the definition.
Yeah, it is in the definition.
Acronyms, not what they
Yeah.
are.
So it just says you can't use those sort of fire suppression foams.
Okay,
I teaming it with hazardous materials. I think in the interest of time, let me just see if there's anything I basically want to draw your attention to. But there are some comments that I put in the document, so if you look at it in Microsoft Word, then I will say down in this last page or two, I've started but not completed yet my efforts to surgically tweak the solar bylaw. So there's 2 changes that I've been trying to grab. One I think is basically okay. All of this is of course gonna have to run by town council. So the existing text in the solar bylaw says that it has a specific language for setbacks for large scale battery storage in solar electric installations. And look what they've done, no less than 500 feet from any abutting. So what I'm gonna basically propose is striking all of that language in the solar bylaw and just say, well, setbacks for co-located BESS installations, which is now going to be a defined term, shall adhere to the requirements in the battery storage bylaw. All right, so we don't have duplication of, setbacks are specified in one place. So that would be, and then there's this other text in the solar bylaw under hazardous materials. And this is where they say any associated battery sources may not be located in zone 1 of the Aquifer Protection District and must be located above the 100-year floodplain. Which again is sort of questionable language because above seems to mean vertical distance.
Right, which would take pretty much
all of Whately off.
all of East Whately out,
Yeah,
until you get to the Whately end.
all right. So
should be all one though.
So there are a few of these. This part I haven't really, I ran out of time. So I'm still trying to figure out how to deal with this, but it may just be sort of, again, striking it, and I may ask town council about this. So that's where we are with this battery storage bylaw. Right, so stop sharing. So you're in addition to studying the rules and regs, I really want people to come prepared to our next meeting with any proposed changes to the battery storage bylaw. And I will, if I have to make any other changes, I will do that and circulate that. With the hope that in February, we can have something that we think is, we could vote to take to a public hearing for March. And if we're still not comfortable with a vote in February, I'll see if we could potentially have a public hearing as late as April and still make a deadline for annual town meeting. That's it on battery storage. We're just about out of time. I just wanted to remind everyone that while battery storage has been taking up a lot of our time, there are like other things, there are other things that we can and should be doing as a planning board. So I'd like you to be thinking about anything that you think I do know that we have to redo our subdivision regulations because they're very old. It's not clear we can do it ourselves. We may need to get some outside help from the FERCog or elsewhere to do that. There have been various pending things dealing with mobile homes. We have in our zoning bylaws various little landmines or sleeping dogs, depending on your favorite metaphor, that would be great to deal with at some point. And maybe that'll just wait until we're done with battery storage. But if there's something that you're passionate about, let's not forget that the planning board is just not only the battery energy storage systems. But all right. Were there any, I know of no other topics that are unexpected that came in, aside from the Simmer's Creamy letter. So we can talk about,
It was perfect timing.
yes, well done, Mike. Very well done. Get full credit for that. So let's discuss when
So is that issue over then?
excuse me?
Is that issue is over?
Well, it's over in the sense that I'm waiting for them to open. I'll go there, I'll get ice cream, and I'll see,
Snoop around.
I'll sniffer,
Do some
you know?
reconnaissance.
Yeah,
I'll look
it's gonna be
for
pretty
fruits and
obvious.
vegetables,
Yeah.
you know? And, you know, if it's June and it's still just,
Ice cream and
if
burgers.
it's still just ice cream and burgers, then I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
be bad cop.
Hopefully they'll up to them what they said they're gonna do.
That's right.
Yeah.
So our next regular meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 24th of February at 5:30 p.m.
I'll be here.
That's still good for everyone?
Mine's Wednesday.
You say 5:30 or 5?
5:30.
5:30.
Yeah, I'll
Tuesday, the 24th.
Tuesday, the 24th of February.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Then I would say,
7:30,
unless anyone else has anything on their minds,
we revise that to 7 and not 7:30. On the website, it says 5:30 to 7:30 on the 24th.
oh, well,
Talk to Jessica.
yeah, but I can see about doing that. Yes, we generally try to end by about 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Of course, to the extent that everyone's here at 5:30.
I was the first one today.
Yeah,
we still-
I got
I have a
the
hard time remembering it's 5:30 and not 6 because everything starts at 6 for me. So
Well,
and I looked today at lunch, I was like, oh, it's
we
5:30,
can-
remember that.
we can reconsider our meeting times.
No, that's
We're
perfect.
doing the
That's-
five.
Yeah, usually 5:30 is okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So then, would anyone like to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn has been made by JB and seconded by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are adjourned at 7:03.